Hello, everybody. This is Michelle back again today in the Permission to Be Powerful interview series. And today I have Cynthia Riggs. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. Yay. Happy to be here.
I'm so happy you're here too. And you're called the Biz Diva, right?
I am.
Oh my goodness, I love that so much. I'll ask you about that in just a second. I like to read people's bios first and then dive right on in. And if I don't do the bio first, I will forget all about it because I'm so into the conversation. So let me read your bio and then we will pop right into that particular piece of the conversation because I love it.
Excellent.
So Cynthia teaches entrepreneurial women business building skills, financial acumen, and how to be quick on their feet so their business will be sustainable and profitable. She is the Biz Diva, a successful entrepreneur since the age of 23. Cynthia built several businesses from the ground up, including a multi-million-dollar company she sold prior to hanging out her consulting shingle. She believes her good fortune in life has been being gifted with the ability to connect her passion to a profitable revenue stream, time and time again. Her greatest joy is being able to impart this wisdom to other women, and her overarching purpose is to support women to step into their own power, connect their passion to a thriving business model, and sustain long-term success. And her personal goal is to increase the percentage of women who make it into the 7-figure business club. Yay.
You got it.
Yay.
Yeah.
So one of the things I love about you, Cynthia, we talked about this a little bit in our pre-interview, is that we both are fairly intense human beings who like to play at the deep end of the pool. Surface level is not super interesting to us. So I would love to know how you came to the point where you were able to really just claim this business diva term, archetype, whatever you want to call it. So tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. It's a good story, actually. So I've been doing mastermind groups for a long time. And back, maybe 10, even maybe more years ago, one of my groups decided they wanted to name their group, right? And they wanted to be the Biz Divas. They came up with it. And one of the women who was a marketing guru said to me, "Oh, you're the Biz Diva." And I said, "Absolutely not." I said, "Nope." I said, "You could be the Biz Divas and I'll be one of you, but no, the Biz Diva is not me." So fast forward a few years, maybe 5 years, and I was in the process of rebranding my business. The name used to be, and my trademark name is Women Building Business, right? Mm-hmm. But I felt like it was time for an upgrade, and the Biz Diva came back to me pretty strongly. And I will tell you that I had a lot of hesitation around it. And mm-hmm. It was one of those situations, which I think is part of my personality, which is that I just decided, really fake it till you make it. That intellectually I could get the persona and I could get why it was a good fit for me. Right. But in my gut, it scared me to claim so much power. I mean,
yes.
That's a very powerful name, right?
Yes.
And so the good news is that over the years, I have fully embraced it, and I really get why my clients saw me as that, and I get how I show up as that person, the Biz Diva.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I love that. That's like the perfect story. Yeah. Because I think your ability to just reflect on that, like being scared to be that powerful, is so huge. I really see that as the biggest barrier to women becoming more visible in their businesses and really putting a stake in the ground about who they really are, is all of that fear that comes up about being that big, that powerful. And also the fact that, we have some negative connotations around the word diva, right? We people have kind of their image of Mariah Carey or whoever it might be, that kind of. But the thing is, there's a negative connotation and an empowering connotation to any archetype, right? That any frame we can put on something, we can take a look at that negative lens, or we can take a look at the empowering kind of positive lens. And it sounds like you were able to claim the parts that people saw in you, which is that you're a powerhouse and that you have, the ability to claim what you want to claim and stand in it with strength. And I love that.
Well, if you think about, again, that archetype, in opera, the women opera singers are divas, and it's a very positive connotation.
Right.
Because they are very, very powerful in their presence in that environment. And, again, I think it's one of those words that got translated to that quote negative. And, we all have the negative connotation. I have the negative connotation, but the beauty of the word, from my point of view, in this moment is that, business is my wheelhouse. I mean, I have more than most people doing what I do have, just because I've been doing what I've been doing for so long. And I've been at all stages of the business, like repetitively, et cetera. So I do feel like, if I think about it, that level of expertise I have does elevate me.
Yeah. You've hit mastery. I mean, and claiming that, I think, for women is another barrier. It's another challenge is, so many women who hold this imposter syndrome. I did it. So I've been a therapist for 15 years. I've worked with teenagers and youth for the last 20 some odd years. I was a theater director, a performer, all of that kind of stuff. And I stepped into this coaching program and was like, okay, I want to be doing coaching. I want to work with women entrepreneurs on their speaking. I want to help them really show up in this really powerful, juicy, super authentic way. But, I don't know. I mean, I haven't done it like that before. My coach kicked my ass. He was like, I'm sorry, how long have you been on stage? I'm like, oh, well, since I was 7. And how old are you now? 47. Oh, so 40 years of experience. Okay. And, so he just kept and really forced me to kind of take a look at this story that I had about myself, that just because I haven't packaged it in this particular way, that I don't have incredible mastery and skills in those areas. Like, that is my wheelhouse, that I can do that with my eyes closed, So I see so many women do that. So you work with women in business. Where do you see them really get impacted by their own stories and all of the stuff that comes up when we think of really stepping into our power? Like, what is it that you notice?
That's a really good question. It's consistent and constant. So it's not like I have to think hard about, well, when did that happen once upon a time? Because it happens
all the time,
daily.
Yeah.
And for most of us, I'm going to say, even those of us who are confident and who are in our wheelhouse and are empowered in a way, it's hard because culturally, there's a lot. I feel like maybe going against us as women, that there's not a lot of support for women to be powerful. I think powerful women are a threat, not only to men, but to other women, that it's part of that paradigm that's gotten created. And I think that, one of the shifts that I've seen really in the years since I've been a consultant, and maybe start a little before that, is, so many women are entering the entrepreneurial marketplace, right? I mean, back when I hung out my consulting shingle, there wasn't really much of anybody doing anything specifically with women but me.
Right.
It wasn't a very full audience like today, like there's 10 of us on every street corner, right?
Right.
And so what I think is that, I think that necessity is pushing women into the entrepreneurial market in part, and, women progressing spiritually, emotionally, and intellectually, and recognizing that they have something of value that's really important for them to bring into the world. Right. So we start with that, right? And then from there, unfortunately, what happens is, that roller coaster ride of, first of all, it takes a lot of bandwidth to build a business, right? It takes resources, time, money, energy, right? And so if you have any shortage of any of those, you're pushed to those bad places really fast.
Right.
You know, that self-defeating, that it's not going to happen, I'm not going to be able to, right? And then if you're fully resourced and you bring in a team of people to help you, I think you have a lot more support and a lot more ability to get where it is you're trying to go. And I think the process ultimately is uplifting. You know, I think about when I started my company, which was I manufactured natural fiber clothing for plus size women. That was the business that I built, right?
Gotcha.
So my degree was in psychology, right? I was a therapist, right? And yet this thing happened and I knew that I had to like find these clothes and get them to these women. Well, nobody was making these clothes. I spent a couple of years researching it and decided I had to be a clothing manufacturer. Well, what did I know about clothing manufacturing? You know, like home ec, I barely passed it when I was in the 7th grade. I remember my little shift that I made, well, it didn't look like much, right? And, you know, my mom sews, my sister sews, you know, it's just, I don't have that gene, right? So my point is that I was dependent on a lot of people, both on the business side of things and on the literal, what I was doing side of things, because my knowledge was so minute. But what I know how to do is identify what I don't know and find somebody to help me do it, right?
Right.
So
yeah,
for me,
that's huge.
I feel like that's a skill that I'm very grateful to have, because it enables me to tackle things that I don't know a lot about. And it doesn't connect with me feeling badly about myself. Yeah. Because what I notice is that I don't expect myself to be able to do everything. You know, especially at this point, I know what I'm good at. I know where my expertises are, and I know where your expertises are. And I know that when I need them, my job is to call you and get your help.
Right.
So I think that I'm talking, I realize I'm talking more about how to circumvent the rabbit hole than I am talking about, you know, how are women in that rabbit hole. But I think that we have a natural tendency to take so much on ourselves on the negative side of things. You know, we don't tend to give ourselves much credit for all the things we're really good at. And boy, are we quick to jump on that which challenges us.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And so I think a lot of your work and my work from our very different vantage points is to support women to step into their self-esteem, you know, to recall those strengths and those beautiful places that we hold that really, even though they've been squished down and put into little small pockets, that there's such a powerful part of who we are.
They are. And it's interesting because I know for myself, one of my awakenings was, you know, I'd been fairly masculine in energy, and, you know, had been really, maybe not even that I've been fairly masculine, but I've been really disconnected from the feminine. I had a lot of judgment about the feminine. It was less powerful. Women use sex as a weapon. You know, I had just all of these ideas, you know, from society and also from what I'd witnessed that really colored my view of what the feminine looked like. And I had a friend invite me into a women's circle for the first time. And it was like a deep dive, like 12 hours, 1 day a month for 6 months. And I'd never done anything like that before in my life. And my friend backed out at the last minute. And it's like, okay, I'm at a choice point here. I either bail or I jump in with both feet. And the first thing that I experienced in that women's circle was the reflection that I received from these women who did not know me. But the exercises that we did were so rich in being able to kind of peel off the layers and really have us show up as our authentic selves. And getting that reflection for me after 20 years of feeling squashed and beat down and kind of told that those were negative qualities about me, to have a circle of women say that those were the best qualities about me, like rewrote my brain. Literally helped me see myself in a completely different light that would never have existed had I not sat in a circle of women, having them reflect those things back to me.
And what are the words that you remember what are you talking about? What are the words?
Yes. So we're switching roles here.
That's all right. I'm very curious.
I love it. So so the most interesting word for me was sensual. I, again, have been so disconnected that I did not see that in myself. I did not see that I'm a very embodied person. And I move my body when I talk. Like there's just so much in there. And they saw me as a sensual woman. They said that I was a powerful woman. They said that I was that I had this unique ability to hear what's not being said and bring that out into the room. They told me that that I was not like too much, that I was passionate and that they could feel my passion in their bones, in their body, that my voice touched them, that avenue of using my voice allowed people to feel me in a different way. Like they just reflected back so much juiciness. I think even one word used that. She said, "You are fucking juicy." And I was like, I don't even know what that means, but in the excavation, I discovered what that meant. And it was just that and you know, what's so funny? My son, many years later, tells me in a conversation in the car we're having, "Mom, conversations with you are like biting into a big, juicy piece of fruit." And that
Nice. What a
moment when he
compliment.
said, I know, right? I'm like, what planet did you come from? But getting that compliment, again, just like took me back to that women's circle where that was the first time I'd ever heard that word used in the context of the feminine in a way that felt empowering. That
Well, you know
didn't,
what this is bringing up for me, which is, I think, a
yeah,
really significant issue, which is women feeling seen,
yeah,
and feeling visible.
yes,
I think that even powerful women, I'm going to talk about, I'll just use you and myself, is that
yeah,
even though we're perceived in the world as being powerful, one of my core issues is not being visible. And
right,
I get so
right,
triggered when I feel like people don't see me or they don't get me. It's like, it's very,
yes,
very challenging for me. And I think
yes,
that, again, it's something that as women, we experience quite a lot of that, and
yeah,
so I can understand how profound that was for you to really feel seen, you
yes.
know,
Oh, it was
and
everything. It was
yeah.
everything. Yeah. And sometimes it was hard to hear,
Hmm. Yeah,
but
some of those
yeah.
words are definitely intense words, but
Hmm.
I don't know you well, but I can certainly see how those words came to be. It's not
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. Thank you. And that's what I believe, again, authenticity, transparency,
Yeah,
openness.
yeah.
That's what it brings. You can see a perfect stranger. Many of us have this gift where we see a perfect stranger and it's like you can see their essence. You can
Mhm.
touch it, you can taste it, you have words for it. And they might not be able to hear it or ready to hear it, but you can feel it. And when we are able, even when we first meet someone, to say, "This is what I see in you," like what a gift that is. What an incredible gift that is. And I know for me, I was always teased for being an incredible optimist, like being overly optimistic. And I laugh now because that's certainly not how I felt on the inside a lot of the time when I was younger, but my optimism was more like I saw somebody's essence and the potential and the richness that was inside, but they had to make the choices to bring that out to the surface. And that was the part that was hard for me when I was younger, is recognizing that they had to do the work. I couldn't do that for them, you know.
Well, I think that, there's a place for optimism, because I know myself to be a cup half full person.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, and I'm also a pragmatist.
Right,
I am very grounded in reality.
right.
Whatever it is, it's like, I see what there is to see. And, I'm so grateful that my spin on things doesn't take me down that rabbit hole time and time
Right.
again, because I'm always looking for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah.
It's like, in the challenging times we're in now, I'm encouraging my clients, my colleagues, my friends, whoever ear I can grab a hold of, that, you know, it's really important that we look to the future and we consider what our future is going to be. What do we want it to be? What do we
Yeah.
want to bring forth? And again, I'm not a create your own reality kind of person. That's not my wheelhouse at all. But it comes from a place of that, you know, I learned this a long time ago, and I think when I was in college. This her name was Meridel LeSueur. She was a poet, and she came. I went to college at Sonoma State back in the day, and she came to speak. And there was a conversation that we had with her after she did her reading, and it was something to the effect of that each generation believes that the worst things are happening to them.
Right.
That nothing that happened in the past is as bad as what
Right.
has happened today. And, you know, I've never forgotten that. And I think I adhere to that, you know, hard, horrible stuff has happened forever. Hard stuff, horrible stuff is happening to us. It's happened to us in the past. It's happening to us now. It's going to happen in the future. But societies don't collapse. The world doesn't end. You know, I mean, obviously some people die, but, you know, I'm optimistic. I'm not going to die. I mean, my people aren't going to die. We're all going to be here for a while. And, you know, if it doesn't work out exactly that way, well, I guess I was wrong. But my premise is that we're all going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know, even though we're challenged, and even though it's hard, and even though we might not be able to easily recognize opportunities and possibilities in front of us. So, you know, again, I believe that it's also a contribution as we're talking about the topic of power, that, and again, you know, I'm not a spiritualist. Like, I don't think, well, the power of positive thinking is what powerful. I believe that being a positive human being and believing that anything is possible does contribute to an attitude that supports standing in one's power.
Yeah. And if we get concrete about it, it's the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, right? A fixed mindset said, this is all there is. There's nothing better. There's nothing more, you know, or I only have this kind of capacity and that's all I got. I was born with these talents or I wasn't. Whereas a growth mindset is all about, you know, how to get curious, how to play with what is, how to keep moving forward, keep expanding what's possible, keep learning, keep growing. And I think that's partly what you're speaking to, is the difference between someone who just is really fixed in their mindset versus like, okay, well, there's a problem in front of us. So how are we going to play with it? Like, what are we going to do with it? How do we?
Yeah, it's an expansive retraction thing. But, you know, one thing to contemplate is, you know, again, one of the things that keeps people, and women in particular, from stepping into their power is fear.
Yeah.
You know, and it's fear of whatever you want to put on the end: fear of the unknown, fear of being successful, fear of not being successful, you know, fear of being found out, that imposter syndrome. And I was talking about this yesterday, and my realization in contemplating what impact does fear have on business development or our growth as women in business, is that, you know, it's mostly old shit. Yeah. It's mostly stuff that we have learned somewhere along our way. It very seldom has anything to do with the reality of what is going on in our life right now.
Absolutely.
You know, so again, being present, you know, I mean, whether you meditate or don't meditate, but just having presence, breathing, you know, being real with what is happening around you, can also really shift the energy out of that stuck old place. You know,
yes. I totally agree.
You know, I mean, it's not that scary things don't happen. It's not that. I'm not trying to say, oh, there's never anything to be afraid of, because that's absolutely not true.
Right.
But our stories about that keep us impacted and stuck and implanted, you know, that's what I'm talking about, is how it does not serve us.
Yeah. And it's funny because even as a therapist, it's like, I think it depends on the person as far as whether the tool is to just assume that this is old shit and come back into presence, you know, which is a beautiful and super useful tool. I do it all the time, right? Like, I don't have to go back into my story. I don't have to go back into the trauma. I don't have to go back there at all. As long as I know that what's happening right now is a reflection of something from back there, right? And I can make that connection and go, yeah, this is old. I can feel it. All right. Okay. So how do I get present with right now? you know, what's happening right in front of me, you know, how do I tell that voice to back off, you know, and come back to the present. And then, yes, there are some things that we have to go back and do the deeper excavation around, right? Like those weeds that just will not go away, no matter what we do, no matter how much we meditate, no matter, you know, how present we seem to be able to get. You know, those are the ones that we might need to go back into and kind of pull up from the roots, you know. But I think I agree with you. In most cases, it's a state change. It's just becoming aware, right? That's something that's happening right now is out of proportion with what's actually happening right now. You know, I'm
Well,
having a feeling flashback or whatever we want to call it, you know.
and you hit the nail on the head, because the word that you used back a little while ago was feel.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where to look
Yes.
for this thing we're talking about, because
Yes.
we skip that step.
Yes.
You know, we move from what our head believes or makes up, or the story or whatever, right? And then we act accordingly, because that's our default. That's what we know how to do. And even if it's brilliantly uncomfortable, it's so comfortable to us because it is so familiar.
Yep.
And I think that's the biggest trap that my clients have, is that inability in this moment, you know, up until now, that inability to recognize that the discomfort is so comfortable that they really aren't all that motivated to move out of it.
Yes.
You know, like, even though they think it in their heads, but no, it's you know, it's a mysterious world we live in, really, when you think about how the polarization of different, you know, entities and issues and whatnot. But I think that's probably what holds us back the most, is the comfort we have with our discomfort, that we have learned to be comfortable. I mean, and you know, I think it's a paradigm that's really easy to understand when you're thinking about people who are abused, or people who are addicts, or, you know, if you think about all the stereotypes of people who have issues, right?
Right.
Well, you know, it's really challenging for them to break out of their behavior, because, you know, whether, I don't know, are they conditioned to it? I don't know, but it's what they know.
Right.
And even if it's miserable, it's still what they know.
Yeah.
You know, and
we're also trained to listen to our head. You know, and
my point.
Especially as women, like, we're so disembodied, like we're cut off at the neck. And so just that simple practice and act of like, stop the presses, you know, just what do I feel? Like, when I think of this business name versus this business name, what do I feel? When I think of taking this action step in my business or this action step in my business, how does that feel in my body? You know, and learning also you know, I talk about discomfort a lot with clients around, you know, there's a difference between discomfort. Like, a lot of people think that when they're uncomfortable or they feel discomfort, that means something bad and terrible is happening, right? Rather than, discomfort is one of how many emotions you felt today, right? But we have this like flag on it, right? Like, uncomfortable, you know? And so we start losing our shit and we get all dysregulated and we start making bad decisions, when it's like, okay, what is it that's uncomfortable? Like, what is really happening here? Am I pushing an edge? Is that my discomfort? Then I might have to step through something that feels comfortable to me to reach my next goal. Okay, that's one thing. You know, is it that my body is in a fear response, despite the fact that there's no evidence around me that it should be in a fear response? Okay, well, what can I do to calm my body down, right? It's fascinating to me that we think that being uncomfortable is this terrible thing. And it's like, it's a temporary situation, as long as we can feel into what that discomfort is actually about. And then, what do we want? Because sometimes my discomfort might be enough for me to say, I don't want that thing anymore, because it makes me that uncomfortable, you know. Or if that's the thing that I want, then it's like, okay, gotta put on my jacket or my suit or my cape or whatever it is, and go ahead and do it anyway, because what I want is on the other side of that. I love the phrase, fear is desire with the brakes on. It's one of my favorite phrases. And that's something that I use for myself when I notice that fear response coming up. It's like, okay, are those the brakes, and do I need to take the brakes off and just do it? Just go. So fascinating. And like you said, so complicated. We're complicated. We're super complicated.
Well, I think about, I'm going to bring us back to the concept of women and power.
Yeah.
And, I hold the belief that part of why we are as a culture where we are is because a long time ago, women's power was very obvious. Women, if you sort of think about it, man, their innate skills and talents and abilities are pretty necessary for continuation of the human race. In a different way, that men's are. Obviously, you need to have, whatever. I don't want to get into that, but I think that I think there's a lot of fear around women's power.
Yeah. And
I think that culturally we have, taken that to new heights, in terms of our country and how, the Western world, even, it's not even just the United States, but how women are, there's a lot of effort to keeping women down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the idea of women and men being equal does not equate in most people's minds. I don't believe most people think that women and men are equal.
And here's what's interesting for me. I don't necessarily agree either. I think it needs to be balance, right? That like when something is off balance, we do something to bring it back into balance, right? And that relationship.
We're really good at living in that.
We are. Yes, you're absolutely correct.
We've accepted it as the norm.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And I think that is definitely part of the issue and part of the challenge is that's like we're constantly seeking that, right? Like, how do I balance my work and my children and my husband and, all of these things. And so that is our MO, that is our natural state. It's what's comfortable for us, et cetera.
It's seldom I've heard a woman who's in a heterosexual relation talk about her husband takes care of half of the responsibilities of what it takes to run, manage, and maintain a household. It happens occasionally, right?
Yes.
But it's it's so tipped just in everyday life as well as, again, I think it's bigger and it expands into the culture.
And I think also that's, those are the stories that also need to be told, right? Because we don't hear those stories. And I think they're more common than we think they are.
What story are you talking about?
The story of a man who takes equal responsibility in a household.
Yeah.
And also who does not have a problem having a powerful woman in the house. And, I am beyond blessed. So after that first women's circle is when I actually had my first date with my current husband. And we've been talking online for about a month. And what I love about my husband is that he wants me to be the most powerful, fulfilled, bright light that I could possibly be. And he doesn't have an ego attached to it other than, he would love to be able to be like, yeah, check out my wife. She does all of these things, but it's just fascinating to me because I had the complete opposite experience most of my life. Most of my life, I was a threat. And that felt so shitty to me. I was like, so that must mean I have to dim myself down. That must mean I have to hide my powerful opinions. That must mean, and then I, do my work and I look at my own shit, my own shadows and all of that kind of stuff. And I meet this man who is just, he does all of the cooking. He does the shopping. I do the cleaning. Like, it's magical. I never, ever, ever saw that growing up as what balance could look like in relationship. And I am so incredibly grateful that I have that, because I think those of us who are powerful women, whether we're in a relationship with a man or a woman, doesn't matter. It's can we find that balance? right? Can we feel like we have the space to rest and the space to be powerful? Do we feel like we are seen and heard, just like you were saying, right? Do we really truly get seen? Like, this man is probably the first human being I've ever really had that he's seen all of it, and he loves all of it, you know, and it's just the most incredible gift I could have been given. And it's allowed me to fully step into my power as a businesswoman, even when I started, I had no fucking idea what I was doing whatsoever. He was still back there like, you're going to figure it out, you know, like, just keep going. So I know it's out there. And I think that, you know, that's part of why I want to have these conversations, right? Is to bring attention to the fact that we get to fucking decide. We as women, when we step into our powers, we get to help decide what this all looks like. And we've had a lot of barriers in our way, and still have a lot of barriers in our way at this stage, but it's so possible to go to the other side. You brought up a story in our pre-interview about going to college and first learning about feminism. Can you share that? Because I think that kind of ties in to some of.
Well, you know, it's a pivot off of your story. It was a different time and a different circumstance, but similar impact, even though from a different angle, I'm going to say. Yeah, and you know, growing up, I was very verbal. I was very opinionated. I was what was called a bleeding heart liberal. My heart was just, you know, I just had so much compassion for all of the really horrible things that I knew about at that time in my life. You know, my great grandmother was alive until I was 27, and you know, she emigrated from Russia at the turn of the last century, and you know, grew up in horrible circumstances, right? And she was one of the first generation of Jews to separate from the religion. Right. So that this is a very important thing. But anyways, her stories about her life and how she became a political activist, you know, and how she had to make choices. For instance, she was telling me that, you know, one of her neighbors wanted to borrow a cooking pot from her, and she had to decide whether she was going to lie and let the woman believe that she kept kosher, or whether she would, you know, come out as a non-observant Jew, which, like, you know, back in the day was not a real popular stance, right?
Yeah.
So starting with my great grandmother, right, you know, and then, you know, being Jewish, so then there's the Holocaust, right? And then I lived in Los Angeles, very close to downtown LA, so the Watts riots were very much a part of my reality. Then the Vietnam War, you know, then the United Farm Workers, you know, so from a very young age, I took up a lot of causes and very heartfelt about what was happening in the world. Okay, so that's just sort of about my personality. The good, I think the part that I really remember with a lot of fondness. Then the other side was the part that was, I was always too much. You know, I was always, I don't know, I did not fit in very well. I was very mature for my age, so I had a lot of intellectual acumen.
Precocious.
Yeah, you know, and I could carry on a conversation with adults with no problem. And, you know, I had a lot of values and opinions back then, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I would say, was my growing up harder than anybody else's? No, I think growing up is painful for all of us in the ways that it's painful. You know, we all have our stories and our situations. But when I came to college, you know, I didn't know anything about feminism. I was 18 years old, but one of the first things I did was took a women's studies class. And I'm going to tell you the truth. It was Our Bodies, Ourselves.
Ah, yes, yes.
Which, and you know, I was in taking this class and in reading this book, I was two things. I was angry and I was humiliated that so much had been kept from me about my own body, first of all.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
That,
yeah.
You know, I mean, I didn't know what an orgasm was. I didn't know, I mean, all these words, all these things.
Right?
I mean, you know, I'm coming out here because, like, you know, that's sort of embarrassing stuff to talk about, but, you know, I was ignorant.
Yeah.
You know, and then, so from, you know, from that, I got very curious and interested, like, what's this thing going on? So I joined a consciousness raising group, which, you know, had a similar impact to me that your women's group had to you, but from a different vantage point, which is that I finally had a picture to paint of why I felt the way that I felt and why people treated me the way that they treated me. And it it was that was when I first very consciously took a step into my power. And it was not easy for people in my life. I'm 18 years old and I go back to Los Angeles and I'm telling everybody about my revelations and my this whole thing about feminism and women power. And I was not the most popular person in my circle of family and friends.
Yeah.
People didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
But I knew it. Like I drank the Kool-Aid. I mean,
Yep.
I drank that Kool-Aid it's powerful Kool-Aid. It's
Yes.
still in my body today.
Yes, right? Once you open your eyes, you cannot go back.
And then and again, quote, back in the day, a lot happened. I mean, I became a part of something larger than myself. Commonality of from all of our different vantage points, we all carried a very the same consciousness, the same belief system, and that whole process just changed my life.
Yeah.
It just knowing I wasn't alone, knowing there was nothing wrong with me. That there were reasons that people treated me the way they treated me that had nothing to do with me.
Yes.
It wasn't about me being all these things I thought I was. It was about me being yay, right on, and other people, it was their problem. And I could make that separation that so the level of empowerment that I felt in that time of my life, I believe is really first of all, it stayed with me. It has never left me.
Yeah.
And if I could give everybody that Kool-Aid to drink, I would. It's powerful.
Party at Cynthia's house.
Correct. Yeah, correct. And feminism had a huge impact on our world and on our country. And I feel like it got squashed down. I'm going to refer to Hillary Clinton running for president. I was shocked at how many like-minded to me people and people I knew that were not right-wing Trump people hated Hillary Clinton, hated her. They talked about her with such vehemence and such anger and such negativity. And, I really think it was sexism. I mean, come on, is Hillary any worse than any of those men? No.
Right.
And she actually was a lot better in a lot of ways. But the energy that came at her from in my community of peers was pretty shocking to me. Like, I didn't care. I didn't care that people didn't vote for her, but the way they spoke about her.
Right. Yeah. And even with Michelle Obama, it was like, what she was wearing was the most important thing. Like, hold on a second. Did you hear what she said?
Yeah.
So
I think, again, there's a lot of energy in our country towards diminishing the power of women. And again, Hillary Clinton was an example of a powerful woman who got taken down.
Yeah.
She did. It was intentional. It was mean-spirited. It was quite horrible in my mind. And, Michelle Obama is another example. She's a brilliant, fascinating, lovely human being who, like you said, people diss her on what she's wearing or not wearing, no value for who she is in the world.
And it's much like, this is, I'm going to say this delicately. This is not, we're not having a conversation about race at this moment, even though it's always present with us. It's always in the air. This idea of internalized oppression, I know that I've done a lot of my own anti-racism work around noticing those moments where I have this just completely ingrained belief about this person who is in front of me. And I noticed that in college around women professors versus male professors. I noticed that meta process of noticing that if a male teacher contradicted a female teacher, I tended to believe the male teacher because he must know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And I would catch myself in these moments like, wait, why do I think, do I have any evidence that he's actually more knowledgeable in this situation? Or, and so, much like the other explorations I've done around that, you know, with stereotypes in general, that was something that really struck me, was that I had that internalized belief that was not my own, that came from the society around me, that if the man is speaking, he must be the one with the information.
Well, and again, unfortunately, you know, as a culture, not that many people pay attention to those nuances. They're not very self-reflective. They just take for granted that they think it, so therefore it must be.
Exactly.
You know, I think that thinking is what's got us into a lot of the problems we're into right now. You know, I mean, yeah.
Well, because self-reflection is not a quick fix. We live in a quick fix society and instant gratification, you know, and it's not a quick fix. Like, you have to actually do the work. You have to actually take that time.
And, you know, that I'm going to bring that back to growing a business, because it's sort of the same thing, is that, you know, there's a lot of energy around that, you know, anybody can build a business and anybody can be successful and anybody can have 6 figures or 7 figures or whatever the common, you know, number of the day is. And, you know, I think that that's an unkind belief, because it's not true. I don't believe it's true. I think that some people don't have, their idea isn't really in enough alignment to really translate into a revenue producing, that's going to be a happy moment for them. Some people don't have the bandwidth, the resources, the capacity to actually do what it takes to build a business. You know, I mean, I don't fault people for trying. I'm not saying, oh, well, you know, people shouldn't bother. It's not really about that. It's more about that, you know, it's not an easy path. It requires so much attention and energy and resources. It's sort of like, you know, raising a child. You know, it's a similar analogy for me, in that not something to be taken lightly. And a lot of the reasons that it takes people a really long time, or they finally don't make it, is because they don't really commit themselves to the path, or to the path that's going to take them where they want to go. I mean, there's lots of paths to choose. I mean, there's a lot of people who do some variation on the theme of what I do. Right. You know? And I think that, again, it's partially people being real with themselves about what are you really looking for. Do you want to be in a community? Well, you can go here if what you really want to do is be in a community of like-minded businesswomen and feel supported and feel energized and feel, you know, good about the possibilities. That's one thing. You know, you can join another community because, you know, you think that marketing is the end all and be all, and if you can figure out the marketing thing, that will take you there. You know, you can get involved with a business community because you sort of like that, and then there's a bazillion I'm not even thinking about. You know, and again, there's a spiritual business community, and then there's the financials, and there's so many different places to land. And you know, what I see happening is that, you know, people go with what they have affinity to, what they're drawn to. But I think that within each of those silos, you know, I get confused about how they really support women to step into building a business, if building a business is what that person really wants. It's such a multifaceted process. You know, I'm not even sure what I'm saying here. You might have to cut this part out. You know,
well, no, I think it's an interesting,
going down the wrong road here.
I think it's an interesting conversation, because part of what you're talking about is, how do we leverage our power, right? How do we leverage our business, what we know? Like, I've been a part of all kinds of different networking groups, and some of those groups have been fruitful for me, because I feel like I can really get into relationship with these women. I have the ability to really showcase what it is that I do. And, you know, they're able to make good referrals. And there have been some that have just been straight up duds, you know, where like I got nothing from the experience. You know, I listened to a speaker, I might've gotten a nugget from the speaker, but there was no real opportunity to build relationship, to really hear from each other, like what makes them different and unique, and what is their journey been, and all of those juicy things that we as women love to learn about each other. Like, we love those conversations. And I noticed that a lot of the networking groups, again, depending on what you're there for, don't necessarily offer that. And it makes it difficult for me, one, to make referrals because I don't know you. I don't actually know your work. I don't have a connection with you, or there's no real opportunity, for anything that's really tangible to be taken from it. You know what I mean? It satisfies my desire to be around other women.
Well, I always encourage people to spend their time where they feel affinity, because eventually the business will come along, and it's not usually quick. I mean, like we were saying,
Yeah.
sometimes it can take a long time for you actually to get in that groove with the group, but you should just be where you like to be, where it feels good to be, where you feel seen and you feel comfortable. I mean, when you're going against the grain, it's not real helpful. Even if everybody else tells you what a great group it is, if it doesn't feel good to you, I support you just not to bother to spend a lot of time there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We have to feel filled up, and there has to be something that we're taking away from the group that motivates, inspires, whatever that might be. And I have noticed that it's I haven't been in business very long, and so when I would go into these groups, I'd be so excited, and then I'd get so disappointed right away. I'm like, oh, what is this really? Like, what am I actually doing here? But some of those groups, when I stepped in the door, like one of the groups I think you and I participated in, like as soon as I walked in the door, first of all, I knew most of the women in the room. And secondly, it was just like a sanctuary to just sit back and relax and connect. And that felt beautiful. It felt amazing to be able to experience that. So yeah, I agree. There's a lot of gurus out there that tell us what we should and shouldn't be doing. And I really believe that one of the things that you and I both kind of focus on is, so check in with yourself about that. How does that feel? Is it effective? Are you actually getting what you want from doing that particular thing? You brought up the financial piece, and I love the fact that, I've talked to a lot of business coaches, and some of them focus on, the speaking, and some of them focus on community building, and there's all of these things, but you really highlighted like teaching business acumen and working with them with the financial piece. So can you tell me a little bit about why that's so important for women, especially in this relationship to power?
Well, the first piece for me is that, it's impossible to build a financially successful business if you don't have some level of what I call financial acumen, right? Yeah. That understanding money and numbers and how it all works is pretty essential, and I think that a lot of people don't have particularly good financial behavior. I mean, they're self-avowed people. It's not like I'm naming them or calling them out, right? And it's really in the way because it's a challenge. It's a challenging behavior to change, right? Because we learned that a long time ago, also, right? But I think that I look at I built a multi-million-dollar business flying by the seat of my pants. And one of the reasons I believe I was successful is because I understand money and I understand income and expenses, and I'm very pragmatic. So I really get it from a very grounded place. And so I have a lot of, I give the financial picture a lot of value in my world.
Right.
Right. So, and I think that, again, it's a piece that's really overlooked. Even people that we know that appear really successful on the outside, man, they got some shit going on with the money stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they don't feel motivated to change it. And, that's okay. I mean, if it works for you, it works for you. I don't actually feel judgmental about it. I feel concerned, right? Because there's a lot of illusions around money and a lot of fantasy around money and a lot of, I don't know, but like the numbers don't lie. That's really what it is. And, if I give one piece of clear advice, it's if you have your head in the sand, take it out. Because even if it's bad, it's better to know that it's bad and figure out how to solve it. Because as I told you, I don't believe most problems cannot be solved, you know, and part of business, you know, and again, okay, so here's the thing. Statistically, 3% of women in this country, when I sold my company in 2004, reached a 7-figure level of business, okay? Fast forward, 2020, same freaking statistic. And there's a boatload more women in the entrepreneurial market these days than there were 16 years ago. But the statistic is, it was probably from 2018, so it's not literally from today, but I was shocked. Okay.
Yes.
And part of the reason I believe is that there doesn't seem to be a clear relationship in many women's minds that there are concrete, clear business things you need to do to build a successful business. It's not just desire and want. It's not just even having something really of value to people. It's that, you know, and part of what it is because, you know, just like we're in COVID-19, shit happens. And you have to be quick to pivot. You have to be paying attention. And I'm not talking about pivot your business into something else or pivot away. I'm talking about you need to be lean and mean and on your feet and ready to rock and roll. And if you don't really know what's going on in your business, you are going to be at a loss to have any clue what it is that you need to be doing.
Absolutely.
You know, when 9/11 happened, you know, my whole financial world came to a halt in like 5 seconds. And it was the time of year our catalog dropped in August. So this happened, you know, September. And, you know, all our line of credit's totally used up. We have not a pot to piss in because we're waiting for the money to come in. Well, the world stopped. So I was hustling my ass. I was driving down to Berkeley with truckloads of clothes, selling clothes on the street corner. I mean, really, you know, I mean, I had clients, but I did whatever I could to make money so I could make payroll. I had 25 employees, right? So my point is that if it's just you and your thing and you're not really treating it like a business, that's really fine. But it's a different issue. You know, I'm a business consultant. And I'm a business consultant because I want to work with women who want a business. They don't want to practice. You know, the fee for service model, I mean, it's not that you're not a business certainly, but you know, the ability to scale is very limited.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know,
you raise your rates every, you know, $5 every, you know, year. Like
it's a tough way to make a lot of money is to be a fee for service people because, you know, back when I became a one-page business plan consultant in 2006, I think, you know, Jim Horan, the guy who developed the program, I was taking a class with him or something, and he had us fill out this spreadsheet of, you know, if you were a consultant and you were charging X amount per hour, how much would you have to charge in order to make 6 figures, right? And this was including that you have vacation time when you're not working, you have sick time when you're not working, maybe you don't work, you know, 40 hours a week, billable hours, blah, blah, blah. And I believe at the time it was like you had to make about $350, you had to charge $350 an hour to reach $100,000 in revenue. Yeah. And again, people don't connect these dots. They have fantasies. Oh, I'm going to have a 6-figure, hang out my shingle, 6 figures, you know? And it's not that you'll never get there, but first of all, it's not typically instantaneous and it's hard.
Right.
You
and
know?
That's what I love about you and just the way you are in the world is, again, it's like, you know, you're straddling the line. You're straddling the line between the feminine, like feel your way into it. How does that feel? Put yourself around people that feel good to you, you know, etc. Yes, you have a dream. Like, let's incubate that dream. Let's meditate on it, vision board about it, draw about it, whatever you want to do. And here's some reality for you. You know, like these are basic things you must have. You cannot ignore them. You cannot meditate them away or wish them away. You know, these are important aspects of being in business. And I think it's so important when you have someone in your field who can straddle that line, because what I see is either, you know, women kind of going way far on this end, you know, and then they're not touching into the feminine at all. And that feels really shitty to some women. They're like, I'm not going to do it that way. That's not intuitive. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. Versus the women who are fully over here, and it's like, you know, just manifest it and it will come, you know, and it's like, yes, I do believe in some of that, you know, but I do believe you got to bring it into the practical. You got to bring in even spirituality. Like I always joke that I practice practical spirituality.
Right.
You know, like I bring it down into like, how does this help me function in the world, you know, in this body that I have, you know, in this reality that is in front of me right now at this moment. And I love that you bring both sides of that, because I know that many women are searching for that. They know they need this business acumen piece, but they also want someone who really gets the feminine, who really understands their desire to sit with something or feel something out, or, you know, get into the juiciness of it. Thank you. Thank you
Oh,
for
thank you for
bringing
having
both.
me. Lovely speaking with you. We have to do it some more.
I know. We could go on forever. We've already like, shit, I think this is the longest interview I've done so far. Because we could just keep going. There's so much goodness here, so much richness. And
thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and it was lovely talking with you. And
thank you.
yeah, I'm going to wish you an excellent rest of your day.
You too. You too. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Cynthia Riggs, everybody. And I will put up her video very soon. And then if you are part of the members page, do you have a free gift for us?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 30-minute complimentary consultation.
Oh my goodness. You guys have
Yeah.
no idea. So if you want access
And
to
you can
that,
have one too.
Yay!
All right.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so, so much. Mwah.
Good day. Thank you.
You too.